I do not think Gideon has done any less evil than the so-called prime evil.
He's a broken guy. He's a changed person.
A person whose secrets are his own. And a hard person.
I mean, secrets make you powerful. It makes you feel powerful. And people feed on that.
You know, he's cold.
He had very cold grey eyes, and there was definitely something below the surface.
Today, most South Africans know the name of Gideon Nibot, but this wasn't always the case. Although Eastern Cape anti-apartheid activists knew the man's fearsome reputation, the full extent of what he and other Eastern Cape security policemen had been up to in this province only started emerging as the Truth Commission got underway here 8 years ago. In the beginning, Gideon Nibot still tried to stop that information from coming out, and a court order initially prevented his name from even being mentioned.
So we will ask you that question now, Nkuseli Jack. Do you intend to name Gideon Nibot as a perpetrator in your testimony?
I think 70% of my testimony would have dwelled on the matters relating to the person you mentioned.
Is Nibot you are mentioning here the gentleman who is known as Lieutenant Colonel Nibot, who brought an application for certain names not to be mentioned, certainly not his name? Is that who you are talking about?
That is exactly the person I'm talking about.
No, Mr. X. There was
also Mr. X, who I'm not going to mention today. They said, we are going to castrate you today. That's what Mr. X said to me. People must know that this man that we're not supposed to mention, people must know how busy he was, how active he was in the torturing of people. You could see that even if he was walking, he was just walking as if he owns the world.
Gideon Nibot could have been forgiven for thinking he owned the world once. For 2 decades, he had been given the power to abduct, torture, and kill, all in the name of national security. Today, all that power is gone. South Africa is a very different place. He stands alone. Soon he will answer for murders he says were authorized by his superiors and condoned by the political bosses. Gideon Johannes Nibot is 53 years old. His father was a policeman and he followed him into the force in 1970. 5 years later, he was recruited into the so-called Special Branch. He was an Afrikaner fluent in Xhosa, making him perfect for the job. For 20 years, he operated as a proud and loyal member of the security police, reaching the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. He quickly gained a reputation for being ruthless and effective.
If the walls could speak of what effective this Special Branch were in that stage, how effective we were. But at that stage, I accepted it, the apartheid regime, their policies, I applied with it. I actually blindfolded followed that footsteps of my superiors and all my politicians. And I never questioned any problem because I thought it was right in my mind. But now, retrospect, like in now, see, no, it was wrong. It's wrong.
After the break, why Nibot and why now? In May 1985, Gideon Nibot and 3 accomplices from the Eastern Cape Security Branch, as well as a contingent of policemen from Vlakplaas, abducted 3 activists from Port Elizabeth Airport. The 3 men were taken to a remote police base on a farm near Cradock in the Eastern Cape. The so-called Pepco 3 were detained here for 18 hours and then killed. The black security policemen present said the men were tortured to death. Gideon Nibot and the others admitted to murder, but denied any form of torture.
They were taken out of the garage or carried out one by one. Captain van Zyl shot Mr. Harshe with a .22 caliber gun. He handed the gun to me, after which I in turn shot Mr. Godlozi.
Lieutenant Nibot beat them up with an iron pipe into their heads so severely that they were kicked, they were punched, they were stomped, or they were jumped over their heads, and they were killed. Yes, they died. They died one by one.
In 1997, Gideon Nibot and 8 others applied for amnesty for the killing of 3 police colleagues and an informer. They said the men had to be eliminated because they were about to cross over to the ANC. The 4 men were sent on a bogus mission in a car loaded with explosives. They were then blown up. Nibot detonated the bomb, and the incident became known as the Motherwell bombing.
Net terloops het u die knoppie gedruk wat die bom laat afgaan het.
Dit is so eerlik.
Het u 'n probleem daarmee gehad?
Ek was nogal huiwerig om dit te doen, eerlik.
Hoekom?
Want dit is kollegas.
Gideon Nibot was refused amnesty for his role in the Motherwell bombing. The Amnesty Committee found there'd been no political motive. He was also refused amnesty for his role in the killing of the Pepco 3. In this case, the committee said he'd not told the truth about the torture of the victims before they were killed. He was also refused amnesty for his role in the death of Steve Biko. So the options for Gideon Nibot seem to be running out. With his now being charged for murder in the case of the Pepco 3, he might end up in prison like Eugene de Kock. But who is the man behind the mask? A rare glimpse of the person behind the atrocities came when he went to visit the parents of Siphiwe Mthimkhulu. He went there to ask for forgiveness because Siphiwe Mthimkhulu and his friend Topsy Madaka had been killed by Gideon Nibot and his colleagues. And in this case, Gideon Nibot had been granted amnesty.
Tata and Mama, thank you for the opportunity that I could meet you people today, the family. Why I'm here is to seek forgiveness from the family for what hardship that I've caused in the past as a result of the apartheid regime.
Mm-hmm. The system wanted people to die in our hands and say, you've got nothing to do with that. We put all these things onto you because you are the very, very person you were monitoring people.
Yeah, no, I accept that.
Till the end.
Yeah, I accept that. But again, I wasn't in a position to release him.
I think you are the one who gave an approval to those gentlemen because they gave you a chance to interrogate people.
But what
was your motivation? Because it was you who was giving the report.
My job was to get information, and which I did for my country, and which I'm saying it's wrong. It's wrong what we've done. I've interrogated a lot of people. That is so. And I know what physical or psychological method to use. But I never used no physical method on Siphiwe. That I can tell you with the truth yet. And a matter of fact,
I never eliminated Sipion. Yeah, but here I'm here and asking you people forgiveness.
You never eliminated him?
No, I never.
Who eliminated him?
General Rensburg did.
Were you not together in the mission?
Yes, but I was...
All in all, you and Rensburg and others eliminated Spirit.
That's true. I didn't actually eliminate, although I was accomplice, yes. Thank you so. I was an accomplice.
Who shot them?
I shot Topsy.
Who shot them? Were you Christian before you... When did you start being a Christian?
That was in 72. I gave my heart to it.
You also failed as a Christian. You are coming now at sunset. You are a Christian. I'm also a Christian. But the doings were not for Christians. What I'm trying to say is now, you came late. It is not late for God. Underline that one.
That's right.
But to me, you came late.
That's right.
I had, or I have got, or we have got no price to be paid for Spiro's soul. Nobody ever can pay my son's soul.
Never.
I've got no price for him. I don't care for anybody's money. My son's body or soul will never come back to this world. Okay, then now I think I have come out with whatever I had in me, and you've possibly answered the questions I've been asking you.
That's true. I've done my duty, and I know it's difficult for you as a family. I know it. You know, it's difficult for me to place myself in your shoes. I know it. You know, so it's not easy. It's not easy, I know. But I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you just for the opportunity that I can meet with Tata and Mom. That's all I want to ask. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Did he call her too?
Mr. Nibot, my wife will say to you, you're too late. And me, I say so. You're too late. 15 years. No sorry about you, this family. But it's pure Mtimkulu, the son. Very sorry. Thank you to come.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you to come. But it's no sorry here. The family is no sorry about you and your company and your lawyers.
Thank you.
I think we made it.
The meeting took a strange turn when Sipiwe's son, who'd been listening to the conversation, smashed a vase on Nibot's head, fracturing his skull.
Just sit down, don't cry. I'm still busy now, please, huh? Sit down.
He keep on lying to us. That's why I do something to show that I'm angry. And I don't think that I will forgive him.
Gideon was trained to deny. I mean, the first natural reaction in that type of job, if someone is asking you something, is to deny it, because it gives you time to think. So the truth is always something that comes later, after you've thought about it. So if he seems bland and blank and without any emotion, that doesn't mean that he doesn't feel it. But he can also be numb.
Rian Labuschagne today is a minister in the Dutch Reformed Church. He's also a former intelligence agent and knows the shadowy world of covert operations. He wrote a book about his life in the Secret Service and has recently gotten to know Gideon Nibot.
People were led to believe that you can do these type of things as long as it is for the state and not for yourself. So there was a false perception created, and people really believed it. I mean, that you are able to do certain things, but that you will be protected because it's not for yourself. You are doing it for this cause. He's a broken man. In his mind, he's in prison already. I mean, this whole thing has captured his whole being. I mean, he wakes up with it, he goes to bed with it. It's not something that goes away like a headache or anything. I like to compare it with someone who's accepted death. Everything that he might have been, he's not today. I mean, this whole process, I mean, it stripped everything away from him. He's not a colonel anymore today. He doesn't drive a fancy car. He lives in a small little house. He wears valleys and a khaki brook and a shirt, and he offers you coffee at old-style coffee cups. There's nothing flashy. It's just the basics. It's a good concept to say, I've done this wrong, forgive me, I'm sorry. I mean, it's a universal principle. I mean, you can't carry on with the future if you haven't dealt with the past. But whether it has happened in fact in the realities of those people's lives, I'm not too sure. I can confess because it's a legal process that I have to get through so that I can continue with my life. That doesn't really necessarily mean I had this moment with God and I'm truthfully sorry for what happened.
After the break, who's next? Colonel Nibot and the others in the Motherwell case appealed the findings of the Amnesty Committee, and they were successful. So a new amnesty hearing will be held later this month here in Port Elizabeth. But even if Nibot receives amnesty this time, he will still be prosecuted for murder in the case of the Pepco 3. All of this raises a number of questions. The most obvious of those is who is next. But the other question is who will get away? Because throughout this process, the political masters, and in some cases those who gave the orders to the foot soldiers like Nibot, were not brought to book. Now those most likely to come under the spotlight for possible prosecution are those who were refused amnesty or those who didn't apply. General Nick van Rensburg was the commander of the unit that killed the Pepco 3. He was denied amnesty and could be prosecuted. General Krappies Engelbrecht was the head of Section C, which ran Vlakplaas. He was also implicated in supplying weapons to Inkatha to destabilize the country before the '94 elections. Joe Verster was the head of the notorious CCB that murdered and maimed anti-apartheid activists across southern Africa. He did not apply for amnesty.
Joe Verster was one prime example. He just stuck his finger at us. He just told us, look, you can forget, I'm not going to tell you about that.
The South African security police were virtually the only participants in the Truth Commission. There was a lot of other participants, but they were mostly people who were serving sentences. I regard it as rather unfortunate. The Defence Force didn't take part, and the majority of the ANC members who at that stage were not serving prison terms did not take part.
I don't have a problem with the fact that people who came forward and didn't get amnesty are being prosecuted. The problem may well be, do we have the evidence to go after the others who didn't come forward, perhaps precisely because they felt secure that there wasn't going to be a prospect of prosecution because they knew they'd cover their tracks pretty well.
One such man is Eddie Webb. The overall commander of the CCB also refused to apply for amnesty. Stahlberger was the head of the so-called internal region of the CCB. His men killed, amongst others, SWAPO leader Anton Lubowski and academic David Webster. He did not apply for amnesty.
Unfortunately, because of the lifetime of the TRC, even though there was a whole bunch of documents that we had gathered about the CCB, the time just was not enough for us to have made a purposeful investigation. Now, all of that material obviously has gone to the Department of Justice.
IFP leader Philip Powell now lives abroad. he could be open to prosecution for gun running and his role in Inkatha atrocities during the early 90s. Humphrey Ndlovu was the head of Inkatha in the Old Transvaal. He conspired with Eugene de Kock and Krappies Engelbrecht to destabilize the East Rand. He didn't apply for amnesty. M.Z. Khumalo, former IFP Secretary General, also didn't apply for amnesty and is implicated in the same crimes as Ndlovu. Former security policeman General Jack Buchner could be prosecuted for his role in arming and mobilizing Inkatha impis. Letlapa Mpahlele, the PAC's former head of operations, also didn't apply for amnesty, despite having taken responsibility for ordering numerous attacks on farms and other targets.
It affirms and legitimizes the whole TRC process and what was most important about it, which was that amnesty was not unconditional, that the process of amnesty was a condition of providing information. It was an extraordinary opportunity for people to come forward who are really committed to reconciliation. And I think that this is a very important process. It reaffirms the legitimacy of the rule of law in South Africa, and I think it testifies in some way to the dignity and the honor of victims who, through the process of the TRC, may have lost their claims or expectations around justice or civil rights.
I think the Truth Commission was run from back to front. I think an agreement should have been reached at a political level, where political leaders should have walked in front and brought everyone to the table with the guarantees and making full disclosure, and we would have been able to close this chapter a lot faster.
The chapter isn't closed. The Truth Commission refused amnesty to Gideon Nibot and his accomplices because they said they tried to hide the gruesome torture deaths of their victims. They only admitted to a clinical execution.
If you come forward and admit to killing people, I do not think whether there was some form of assault would really entitle people to come forward and say no full disclosure was made and therefore we refuse amnesty.
And I said to Francois, you know, your versions are, are sanitized. And I think you are running the danger of not being able to convince the Amnesty Committee.
I think it is human nature that people will set out to try and make the indefendable a little bit more easy on the palate. I do not believe that at any stage any of my clients had the object to mislead the Truth Commission. If I had such a notion and if I had any such ideas, I wouldn't have brought the applications to the TRC.
Gideon Nibot might or might not have wanted to mislead the TRC. It makes no difference. The law is clear. If you didn't receive amnesty, you can be prosecuted. But why Nibot? And why now, many ask? All that the Priority Litigations Unit of the Scorpions will say is that Nibot might be the first, but he won't be the last. They promise more arrests soon.